Welcome to another edition of EverybodyHatesCleveland.com, the podcast. I am your friendly neighborhood host, Jim Pete, joined today by a new crew. We've got from EHC, we've got Jeff Nomina, and first, Jeff, thanks for coming. I know you're pretty important and everything, so I'm glad you took a few minutes to join us today.
I like to
and of
remember
course,
the little people.
Yeah, well, we are humbled. And of course, we've got Danny Madden from Did the Tribe Win Last Night? Danny, how you doing? I'm sorry I didn't preface you with some important statement, but
well, I'm not an important TV star,
right more than
so you have nothing to preface me with.
Not yet, anyways. We'll probably have some profanity later.
Anyway. Well, maybe.
We're gonna talk today about who knows where we're gonna go with this. If we veer off into Lonnie Chisenhall land, that's fine. But we're gonna start with some different topics before we get there. Anyways, we are gonna start off in the outfield today, and I don't know if you guys paid much attention to today's game, but Jose Ramirez started in center field, which didn't piss people off as Mike Aviles did last year. He's been playing really well, Ramirez, and it seems like he's kind of rolling into this super utility role quite well. What do you guys think about, and I'll start with you, Jeff, what do you guys think about Ramirez as a super utility guy? I mean, automatically, taking into account a healthy team whenever Brantley gets back, don't you think that Ramirez, as the Mike Aviles, immediately improves his team for 2016?
Yeah, I'm all for getting him as many at-bats as possible. I mean, I'm all about getting him in games, and that was one of the downsides to me of Napoli and Uribe, is that I like both signings a lot, but with a full-time DH and now pretty much a full-time third baseman, it's going to be a lot harder to find time for J-Ram and to a lesser extent, Roberto Perez, who's pretty interesting himself. We have a great bench, and we're not going to have as many opportunities to use it as much. So any chances we can get to get Ramirez on the field more, I'm all for. He's one of my favorite guys to watch. I think he's going to be a pretty important part of 2016.
Yeah, well, and I guess, as I flip it over to Danny, is there concern, last year he comes out, he starts at shortstop, he clearly didn't have the J-Ram moxie, and of course anyone who's listening to this is going to know what I'm talking about. Is there any concern that him kind of shifting around the field? I mean, center field, that's a little scary for me considering, and again, not to compare to maybe a positive to Lonnie Chisenhall, they're just kind of plopping him in center, and he seems to be playing well. I mean, I haven't seen him out there. I didn't watch the game today because I couldn't. But is there concern, Danny, that he's going to fail in center field in some sort of way that makes Francona not use him in center? I mean, it didn't scare him with Aviles, so shouldn't scare him with J-Ram, right?
I don't really think so. The thing that's different this year compared to last year when he was the starting shortstop is that he was kind of put in there, and he knew that he wasn't going to stay. He knew that there was a guy behind him that was going to eventually take his spot, so he was just kind of like, I think he was trying to perform over his level, which then made him underperform because he was pushing too hard. And this coming season, it's more of he knows he's on the team, he's going to play pretty much everywhere, and he's pretty much shown that he can play everywhere that he's been asked to play. So I think there's a lot less pressure on his mind, and I think that's even why he's performing better in spring training than he did coming into the season last year.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing about J-Ram now compared to last year is I think it almost seemed like he was playing with his back against the wall, and the funny thing is they sent him down, they bring up Lindor, they bring him back, and he's all of a sudden the super utility guy, and he was a different player. I mean, as amusing as this Minnesota game was, that kind of spells out for me who J-Ram is, and if they get that kind of moxie, I think he could be an interesting player. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, he's certainly like that kind of player that brings like you said, a moxie to the team, and the more
I just
comfortable.
like saying moxie, dude.
It's a good word. I mean, he's got that kind of. I mean, I've never actually met him or seen him on a personal level, but from what I've heard is that he has that kind of swagger on the field and in the clubhouse too that you kind of need to keep things light and keep people not get so stoic, I guess, in the clubhouse.
Yeah, well, so thinking about J-Ram in this lineup, and Jeff was talking about at bats. I think, the DH, as Jeff mentioned, is going to be logjam, especially considering Brantley. I think when Brantley comes up, he's going to be taking up a lot of at bats early on there too. Do you see, back to Jeff? I mean, do you see him getting the 400 to 500 at bats playing? I mean, I guess they're going to use him in center. They're going to use him in short and second. I'm sure you're going to see him in third base. Although, they bring up a guy like Uribe, and I just see Tito. I see Francona on the back of his jersey at some point. But can he get – I mean, listen, you can rip on Francona all you want here, but he does seem to love J-Ram. I mean, let's not forget, he's the first guy that they brought up. They brought him up as a 20-year-old, and this is Francona that did it. They brought him up during that stretch run in 2013. And he's really basically been up since, other than a couple of little stints down in the minors. I mean, you got to think, if there's a guy to take over the Aviles role and get 400 to 500 at bats, it's going to be J-Ram, right?
Yeah, I think they'll make opportunities for him. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit harder, especially with, Lindor's going to play pretty much every day. Yeah, how many games off is he going to get all year? So in terms of shortstop, he's not going to play a ton there. Kipnis, it wouldn't hurt to get some days off. He fades in the second half for whatever reason, and giving him some rest. But, to your point, if Brantley's going to DH some, J-Ram might be the guy who can slip out to left field and cover a little center. Maybe he plays against some righties, at third base quite a bit to sit Uribe, because dude's 140 years old or whatever. I mean, wouldn't want him to die at third base.
It says a lot when he's literally one of the oldest guys on this team. And they've signed, every guy they sign is, over 35. So,
he's old even for, 1 year Indians contract old,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they signed him to a 1 year deal, and he's usually the guy they sign for non-roster. Well, real quick, do you like him better than Ryan Freese? This goes to both of you. I mean, the Pirates signed Freese for a $3 million deal. Uribe, Freese, does it matter? I mean, should they just put Gio out there?
Well, now we're going down a whole different rabbit hole.
All right, let's hold on to that then. I don't want to go down that path. Let's go back to J-Ram real quick, and then we'll bounce over to that. So where do we bat J-Ram in the lineup? Today he batted 8th with Gio batting 9th. To me, J-Ram seems the perfect 9th guy. However, could you see him poking his way? I mean, you're talking about a guy with 50 stolen base speed if he gets enough at bats. He's not your on-base percentage kind of guy. I mean, he doesn't take a lot of walks, but he doesn't strike out a lot either. I mean, could he eventually be a guy that they look at in the leadoff role, which does lead us down a whole nother path? I mean, it's funny how many paths we can go with this. But where do you see J-Ram in this lineup offensively? I mean, here's a guy who can get on base and shake things up. I mean, he's a good base runner and speed, and we don't have a lot of that.
I think his spot in the lineup really depends on if Tyler Naquin makes the team. Because I always kind of saw Naquin as the number 9 guy.
Path, by the way.
Yeah, it's another path. But I always saw Naquin as kind of like a number 9 guy because of his on-base abilities, and then it would roll over to Kipnis at the leadoff spot, so it would be a good way to kind of set up a big inning. If Naquin is not there, then yes, I think that J-Ram is a perfect number 9 guy. But even if Naquin's there, I think J-Ram is a 7 or 8 guy kind of batting around where I would think Uribe would probably bat.
I think, I threw this out on Twitter today, and I know that this is a smoking hot take. I'm a big believer that J-Ram's going to get on base a lot this year. If you look at the last year, his strikeout and walk ratio seemed like something clicked a little bit, maybe in 2014, and especially last year. If Tito's going to bunt guys all the time from the 2 spot, I'm interested in seeing J-Ram there. I mean, if you're giving up a lot of outs there anyway, I don't want Lindor there. And J-Ram might be a guy who can, offer some of that speed, offer some of that getting on base and making things happen and shaking things up. I don't know. I know it's a little bit crazy. I know he hasn't proven nearly enough there. But if you believe in the myth of J-Ram, I think it's an interesting idea.
Okay, so just real quick, and I know there's really no brief asides. There's so many paths we can go with this. So just listening to you there, Jeff, do you think, I mean, are we kind of at the place now, and I certainly am, I'm just going to preface it with this, that Lindor is going to be this 300 hitter, pretty good on base percentage, and a guy who can, a guy who we need offensively to put the stick on the ball. Is that where we at with Lindor this early? I mean, I am. I've been there since the start. But is Lindor that important to us offensively, where we're talking about not wasting his offense in the two-hole if he's going to bunt too much? I don't care who takes that.
I don't think he's necessarily going to be a 300 hitter, but I still think he's that important to us offensively, and that says more about our offensive roster than it does.
Yeah, well, that's the truth.
I think he'll be good, but I think he'll be significantly worse than what we saw last year.
And I just real quick, and I'll cut this out if it doesn't work. Nino, can you speak? Can you hear us for one?
I can hear you. You'll have to tell me if I can speak.
Yes.
We got it to
Nino
work.
Colla has joined us. Nino, we're talking about Lonnie Chisenhall. I'm just kidding. We're not really. we're on
shot.
I suspect we'll get there in the next 10 minutes, but we're talking right now about we just finished talking about J-Ram for the most part, and Jeff was just talking about putting him in the two-hole as kind of our if we're gonna bunt anybody, he's the guy we bunt, and Jeff was talking about this on Twitter today, and I know you saw it, and we're engaging in it a little bit, but Lindor is our number 2 guy, obviously very valuable player to us, and that's probably the understatement of the century. Where do you see him, Lindor, offensively? Is he that valuable that it would make sense to put J-Ram in the 2-hole and slide Lindor either down? I'm assuming, Jeff, you want him at the 3 spot, or do you want him bumped up to the 1 spot?
Yeah, I'm a believer in Lindor leading off, but I know that's controversial too.
Yeah, well, I think everything's controversial in the land of Indians Twitter, but Nino, where do you go?
Yeah,
where do you go with this?
I think if you put Ramirez up in the 2-hole, it would make logical sense to. I would rather slide Lindor up 1 rather than move him down, because you could always put somebody like Kipnis in the 3-hole, and that would make a little bit more sense. Just in terms of keeping Kipnis's. Because Kipnis is going to hit. He'll hit, and him being in the 3-hole makes a little bit more sense than sliding Lindor down any further. Because you want Lindor getting a few more at bats than he would if he was slid down. Because I mean, I don't know. You're not putting him clean up. You're not. I mean, you could put him in the 3-hole, but. I think if Ramirez is in the 2-hole, which I like, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if Tito's going to be Tito and bunt. Moving
Tito being Tito is the name of this podcast.
Oh, boy. I'm going to get in trouble for that. But yeah, I like that.
Well, okay. I mean, so let's look at this lineup, Danny. I'm going to throw this to you. Let's just picture this for a second, because if you really stop and think about it, and you put Lindor with 30 stolen base speed in the 1-hole, J-Ram with 50 stolen base speed in the 2-hole. Obviously, Kipnis has got to be 3rd. Here's the lob. Who bats cleanup in a healthy Cleveland Indians lineup? And I mean, if you pay any attention to my Twitter, you know where I'm going with this. But I mean, if you get J-Ram in the 2-hole and you have Lindor in the 1-hole, this healthy lineup gets really interesting. Okay, we'll start with you, Danny. Let's think of who's our cleanup hitter in this lineup. It's now, and then to throw this all into a monkey wrench when we start considering power hitters or not power hitters in this number 4 spot. Yan Gomes is hitting the ball a ton, and I've always contended that he could be a good cleanup hitter. He's not the guy I'd pick, but all of a sudden things start to shake out really interestingly if you consider J-Ram a legitimate contender for the number 2-hole, which I think he is. Down the road. Danny, you put him at 2. Who do you put in cleanup?
Oh, I put Michael Brantley there all day long. I've always, not always, but over the last at least 2 seasons, I've thought that Brantley should be there anyway. I've never really thought of Carlos Santana as a cleanup hitter. I've always been forced Carlos Santana, batting second or most recently leading off, but apparently the Indians analytical department doesn't believe in that. So. But I really like the
Well,
idea
then wait a
of having
second.
our
When
best
you
hitter.
hear Terry Francona say, I've been thinking about putting Carlos Santana in the one hole, that means the analytical department has been calling him up a few times. But
Right.
I digress.
Tease.
But I always just assumed that your cleanup hitter was supposed to be one of your best hitters. If he's not batting third, then he's batting fourth. Not the guy that will walk on base and have power every now and then. Granted, I know that Santana has a great ISO and he has good power, but his contact rate doesn't suffice for cleanup in my eyes. I guess. I really like Brantley. I really like Brantley there, and I like Santana lower in the lineup or batting second. But I don't like Santana cleaning up. I like Brantley cleaning up.
Well, I mean, I agree. I think Brantley, I mean, you put those three guys in front of him or even replace one of them with Santana, I just couldn't fathom how many runs he would drive in. Smartest, one of the top 5 IQ batters in baseball, and Michael Brantley. You put guys on base, he's going to bring them in. Jeff, what do you think? Who would you bat cleanup?
Yeah, it's got to be Brantley. I think Brantley's got to be. I mean, it's almost hard to move him down to 4 just because you want to get as many at bats as possible. Because I think he's far and away our best hitter.
And there's your count. I mean, that to me is your counterbalance. I mean, if you can get him as far up in the lineup as you can, that's what you do with him. But boy, it'd be tasty to have him in the 4-hole. Nino.
Agree with
Jeff,
moving Santana down, by the way. I'm all about either moving him up or down. I really don't like him in the 4th spot. And I think it'd be really interesting, even with Napoli and Gomes, even maybe trying to drop him down one more spot or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's where this gets tasty because if you're dealing with J-Ram, Lindor, Kipnis, and any semblance of 1, 2, 3, and then you've got Brantley at 4. Think about all those guys you have to plug in behind that top 4. Nino, what do you think? First, okay, Nino, I'm going to twist it a little bit for you. Does that top 3 work for you? Sorry, I mean, come on, I'm the host. I got to switch things up here. Does that top 3 work for you? Would you put Santana in the 1 hole, but who bats 4th regardless?
Yeah, I'd put Santana up there. That's, I mean, far and away. It's something that I know gains a lot of chatter, if you will, is whether Santana should hit higher up in the lineup or not. But, I mean, the guy gets on base via the walk. That's how he gets on base, and he is miscast in that 4-hole, and it just doesn't make sense for him to be there because he's going to get on. He's going to get on, but he's going to get on when other people are on base, and it makes so much more sense for him to hit 1 or 2 or ahead of the guys that are going to hit rather than the guys that are going to walk. But they're not going to do that. The whole Tito thinking about it was a tease, and yeah.
Hattery thinks
I think we'll put it at that.
Hattery's pretty convinced that Francona said that just for the Twitter people. I think it's possible.
I believe it.
So yeah, I think what we ought to do though is as we get closer to the beginning of the season is maybe pull everybody on. Let's take a look at what this lineup eventually turns into. I think J-Ram is one of those guys who not only is going to play, I think you'll see him in left, center, second, third, short. I think in the lineup he's going to be one of those guys we see at the top and we see at the bottom, a lot like Aviles last year, just a really good version of Aviles. I digress. Let's talk about third base. Uribe is in the Dominican right now, trying to figure out all this visa stuff. Gio Urshela has played pretty well. Defensively, of course, he's always going to be a Gold Glove guy. Offensively, he's been playing quite well. Of course, it's spring training. That means absolutely nothing. So, are we going to find out that this visa problem really means that Juan Uribe's name is like Jose Carmona, and then he's 47?
He's the real
not really, but I mean, does Urshela have any chance in hell of making the roster? Is this just biding time for Uribe? Has he got the job? Is this a Francona special, or does Urshela have a chance at some point to take this job, or have we seen the last of him? I mean, and I say that kind of half-assed because it could be the last we see of him. I mean, who knows? Maybe Andy Diaz passes him. But is Urshela going to get a shot at this, or is this just Uribe's job, and are we okay with that? Let's start with Nino. Since you're new to the show, what do you think?
I don't think this is the last we've seen of him. I think he will, at some point in the season, come back. But
will it take an injury, or will he earn it?
You know what? I don't know. I think that he will. I think he will earn it at some point, because I think he will go down and at least show that maybe he can put it together a little bit more consistently at the plate, and then be worthwhile to call up. But whether they, insert him, if it's an injury, then maybe he'll obviously will start, or if it's like, okay, we need to get this kid up here and at least find him some at-bats. I think initially they probably just want him to get consistent at-bats, which is why they're putting him down there. I think if he were a little bit more seasoned, they would have him fill out one of those bench spots, but I think for now they just want him to get some consistent at-bats, which is why he's down there more than anything. But I think once he gets those, he'll be back and maybe fill in and play a little bit of a role on this team, whether it's a starter because of an injury or just kind of being a guy that plays here and there. His defense is so valuable, so you can't not use him at some point this year.
Yeah, well, and it seems like they're veering towards this really good defensive infield, and Uribe can play a solid infield, but he looks like Bartolo Colon. I mean, let's get real here. I don't know. He's not your atypical. I mean, it's not like he's going to get healthier. I don't know. I digress. Jeff, what do you think? Is Uribe your guy, or do you want to see Urshela up here? This is something we're going to be talking about all year. So.
Yeah, Uribe's my guy. I was excited about that signing. I'm probably going to get kicked off not only this podcast but the entire blog for saying this, but I'm not a big Urshela guy.
I don't. You might be in the majority. I don't know.
Yeah, I like Urshela.
I feel like we keep seeing these guys come through Columbus and crush, and I just think that park inflates guys a lot, and it makes us kind of fall in love with their bats that maybe aren't real. I mean, Aguilar kind of falls into that same category, and it's the same kind of a thing. I guess for me, I want to see, like, Uribe this year makes a ton of sense. Like J-Ram as a third baseman is interesting to me, and then Yandy Diaz coming up is interesting. Like, I don't know where Urshela falls in that. It might be fourth out of those four guys. The defense is great. I don't think he's ever going to hit a ton. And I don't want to bring up a sore subject, but it's kind of the Chisenhall thing for me, where we keep putting all glove, no bat guys at the corners, and it just gets really hard to build a roster at some point when you just keep doing that. And if Gio hits, I'll love him, but I just don't know that that's ever going to happen.
Well, he is a project hitter for sure. He's always been a project hitter, and if you look at how his swing changes from year to year, really from sometimes at bat to at bat, you can tell he's a guy who's constantly working on his swing, and not from the perspective of, say, a Tiger Woods playing golf, always working on his swing because his swing's really good and he likes to tinker. He's kind of on the opposite end, always trying to find that good swing. Danny, you just proclaimed yourself an Urshela guy. What are your thoughts on this? Do you see him offensively? Mike Hattery brought up several good points in a piece on EHC a couple of weeks ago about his brief showing in the major leagues, and in particular exit velocity issues, and he's had some BABIP issues in the minor leagues. Is this a guy who's going to continue an upward slant offensively? I mean, all of us agree defensively he's going to be a stalwart if he gets that job. Can he be a factor offensively on this club, on a team that needs offense? I think, it's one thing if we're talking about a team, like the Tigers over the past 2 or 3 years that have had all of this offense, and then you throw Urshela into the mix. This is not that team, at least not right now. I mean, can he be on this roster with the offense as it's constructed?
I want to preface this with the fact that I do like the Juan Uribe signing. I thought that was a good signing because I thought that Gio was kind of rushed last year up to the majors. One, because he was dealing with the injury in spring training and part of last season, so he was rushed. But secondly, I think that he will eventually be the guy this is where it gets confusing because I've seen both of them. I've seen both of Urshela and Diaz almost a full season at Akron for both of them. And I like both of their bats. I saw Gio break out in 2013. The question is going to become whether or not who gets the playing time in Columbus, because right now it's kind of hard to tell who gets the priority, whether it's going to be Gio or if it's going to be Yandy. But I think that if Gio gets more time, more regular at bats, getting seasoned in Columbus, I think that he can, because his contact rate is so good. I think that if he could just build up some strength and get some more consistent at bats, he could probably turn things around and get another shot in the MLB. I think one of the things that you can't really measure with Urshela is the fact that he has that relationship with Lindor, and that's not something that you can just I don't know. It's something that the two of them have together, that they work really well together on the infield because they're best friends. That's not something you can measure as a stat. It's something that you just have to allow to happen on that side of the infield, and I don't know. It's something cool that I like, and I think that it helps them work together better as a team. I don't know. It's silly, but I think that that's something that people don't really think about.
Well, I mean,
I like that.
yeah, I mean, and if you think about the history of the Indians, I mean, the '90s. I mean, you're talking about initially Baerga and Vizquel, great friends off the field, bringing Alomar into the mix, same kind of thing. It's not like we haven't seen that before, and I know we're talking about guys who are pounding the ball offensively back in the '90s, but the same sort of these are guys that have grown up together, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. I don't know how it plays out. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the nice thing about it is we have the veteran presence in Uribe, and as long as he stays healthy, he's never been a really bad player. I mean, he's not going to make the All-Star team. That's not really what we need here. If Urshela earns it, great. That's not a bad thing. All right, let's slay. I want to talk about one thing, at least one more thing here, and I know a bunch of us have to roll, but let's talk about. And I know everybody thinks I'm going to say Chisenhall. That's not where I'm going with this. Let's go to the mound. And I noticed something on Twitter today that was kind of interesting to me. And as we look at this rotation, the way it works out, the starters have looked great. The top three: Kluber, Carrasco, Salazar, Aulick. Dare I say it, special. The intriguing thing in this rotation will be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we've got I guess why don't we throw out who we think 4 and 5 are going to be? I think Bauer's a lock at 4. This is just me, and I think Tomlin to me is going to be the guy at 5 unless he ends up in the pen. Although Anderson has looked tremendous. I want to bring up the name Clevenger because this is kind of where I'm going with this. Clevenger just sent back down in the minors to be in the rotation in Columbus. I think everybody kind of expected that. But there have been rumblings about, from not really from anybody of importance, but Twitter, how Twitter is, about Clevenger potentially being in the bullpen. We heard this with Salazar, and we heard this with almost every Carrasco. Of course, everyone, let's do what we did with Carrasco, not mentioning the fact that Carrasco bounced up and down like a yo-yo for 5 years. Let's start. We're going to start with Danny. Let's go with your number 4 pick, your number 5 pick, and we'll come back later in the year and talk, or later in the spring training and talk about this again. Who are your 4 and 5s, and what do you think about this nonsense about putting Clevenger in the bullpen?
Oh, I got takes, and they are hot.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to serve anything up here, but if we're playing T-ball, this is the T-ball question.
All right. Well, first off, my rotation answer is I think that Bauer is he's gonna be 4. That's guaranteed. There's no way around that. And he could be terrible and he's gonna get 4 just because of the fact that he's been in the rotation for 2 years now, on and off 2 years. 5, I think that while I think that Tomlin is going to get it, I really would like to see Cody or TJ House get it. I would really like to see Cody get it. Just because of how our defense plays and the way he's a high ground ball pitcher, I think that Cody has been looking really, really good this spring. So I think that
I think Cody's got upside here that nobody talks about.
I mean, we've both seen him pitch a lot. I saw him pitch a lot at Akron. I saw when he was terrible, and I saw when he was really good last year. So I really like Cody as a pitcher. I think that he is going to do well, especially with the way that he's looked lately. As far as this, excuse my language, this bullshit about Clevenger going to the bullpen, it's just absolutely it's not even like fathomable to me. It's like when Salazar first came up and people were like, he's only got one pitch. Let's just put him in the bullpen. So we're just gonna waste
then he
all
had
this
two
time
pitches,
that we've been
and
putting
we're
into
still going
this.
to move him to the bullpen. I've even heard it this year. Maybe his arm's not sound. Let's move Salazar to the bullpen, but that's a whole other conversation. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's just like, you waste all this time and this effort, and I don't understand that Clevenger's only been here for a season and a half. But you waste all this time and this effort stretching a guy out, and just because you might have a need in a bullpen, you're gonna waste a top arm like someone like Salazar or someone like Clevenger and move them to the bullpen where they're gonna pitch maybe 70 games for maybe 1 to 2 innings a game. I just think that's a gigantic waste of talent. It's a gigantic waste of a value of a player who was only 25. So people were ripping on him because he was older than a lot of people. He was older than Salazar. He's just a little bit older than Bauer, I think. I don't know. The idea is I can't even wrap my head around it. It's just so I don't understand why anyone would think that that's a good idea.
Well, okay. So, and when have they done that? When have they ever done that? They did it with Carrasco because Carrasco sucked. I mean, he sucked as a starter. Okay, he didn't suck as a starter, but he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing, and he was a bit of a head case. Jeff, I don't know. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to Clevenger. I mean, this is a guy with velocity. This is a guy with a high K rate, low walk rate. I mean, he's going to be a starter in this rotation eventually, right? I mean, they're not going to bounce him around the bullpen, are they?
They did do it with Carmona, I think, right? He was a closer for a hot
remember.
minute.
They did, yeah. Carmona, if I remember right, was the absolute worst closer in the history of the Indians, which is saying a lot.
He was. I think that Salazar and Clevenger are going to look great as setup men for Cody Allen. I think it's going to be. I think that's really the answer. I think it's definitely going to end up 4 and 5 going to Bauer and Tomlin. I don't even think that's a question. But I like Anderson a lot, especially if he's hitting 95, like we're hearing out of spring training. House is an interesting name. Clevenger's interesting, and there's guys coming up. This is kind of why I wish we would have explored the idea of moving in Anderson or Bauer. And I know there's no such thing as pitching depth and all of that, but we don't really have a center fielder right now. So it'd be, that's I kind of wish we'd looked at that.
Did you miss the whole J-Ram conversation, my friend?
But I think it's going to be a lot like Carrasco. They gave him as many chances as they could to stick in the rotation. And, they're going to do that with Bauer and Tomlin because those are the elder statesmen, and you ruffle a lot more feathers moving them to the pen or trying to send them down than you would an Anderson or somebody like that. So it makes the most sense to start with those two guys, and you're going to need the other guys sooner or later.
Nino, my snarky friend, I know you're all over the Clevenger for setup man 2016. I know this is where we switch tracks, and you support this plan.
No.
Okay, and on that note, no, I'm just kidding. Who's your 4-5?
4-5, like Danny and Jeff both said, it's got to be Bauer and Tomlin to start out. I think, though, at some point you're going to see all these people. I think you're going to see House at some point. I think you'll see Anderson. It's just a matter of when you see him, where you see him, who you see him for. I think, if anything, Tomlin's probably on the shortest leash just because they can shift him over to the bullpen. Personally, I think just give them all a shot. I mean, you're going to start out with Tomlin because he's the one that they've, like everyone said, he's kind of the veteran, and they've sort of invested him in a little bit more, and you kind of want to see if he can do it sooner rather than later, whereas with Anderson and House, they can have a little bit more time. I really like TJ House. I don't think he got a fair shake last year. I think starting out he was bounced around, got inconsistent starts, then he got hurt. So I think at some point I would really like to see what he can do given a full shot, given a more consistent work. I think he can. I think he can surprise a few people.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great place that we're at when we can talk about the depth of this rotation. I think it. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I think it's been a misnomer thinking this competition ends at the end of April or at the end of March. I think this is the kind of competition over the years that has gone all the way up till August. Clear back if you go to 2013 when Salazar came up in August to really kind of solidify that rotation. As we look at health and we look at some of these guys who have had Tommy John, you know, I don't think we're going to see this shake out until August. And I think that rotation, hopefully we're still in contention in August. But the thing about Clevenger is I come back to him. I agree. I think Bauer starts the year off as 4. I think Tomlin starts the year off at 5. I'll be shocked if both are in the rotation by August. I think at the end of the year we're going to see Anderson and Clevenger with the wild card being health and TJ House. TJ House in 2014 had some fringe numbers that were absolutely spectacular. He's a ground ball pitcher. He's a lefty, and we don't have one of those that throw with velocity. And that's the other thing people don't talk about with TJ House. He's a lot like Cody Anderson in that he can touch 95. I love it. I love the fact that we're talking about all these guys. You know, we've got Clevenger as this young gun who might grab a spot and never let go. If you look at this rotation, let's say that it's Clevenger and Anderson down the road. These are all mid-20 guys or guys that are tied up through 2021 with Trevor Bauer this wild card. Like, how tasty is that? Like, this is just a great conversation to have. It's the one great conversation, and I've been trying like hell to avoid the outfield other than J-Ram. So I'm just going to avoid it altogether. I'm going to avoid the Lonnie Chisenhall talk, and we're just going to end it right there.
I didn't even get to say poop and hall once.
One last. You know, I was flipping around Twitter today, and I saw Lonnie Chisenhall in center stuff, and I just had to end it. So I'll just end it there. Jeff, you and me have this Lonnie Chisenhall podcast coming, though, my friend. We've got this coming. But I'm not going to have this conversation with just we need Trustin Tito on this one, or we need one of those the Chisenhall fans on this podcast. Maybe Noah Gross.
Otherwise, it would just us making fart noises for
Yeah.
an hour consecutively.
Oh, that's
then you get Joey Butler in the mix, and then you really got Chisenbutt out in right field.
Oh, man, I love Twitter. All right, we're going to cut it there. I mean, guys, it's been great having you on. I know we've been trying to get something like this together. Nino, we've been on before, but I'd like to keep this kind of regular. EHC's been podcasting like crazy, especially Hattery and I, but the goal is to get everybody on here. And Danny, of course, Danny and I will be potting again on Wednesday with Jim Burtis on Tribe Time Now. Those of you that are listening to this, keep coming back. You'll hear Jeff on as much as we can get him. He's got a great podcast talking Cavs from a couple of weeks back. Give that a listen. Nino is our resident sociologist talking about fandom. Also check him out at the Tribe Daily. Great stuff there. I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I haven't had a lot of time to check out over there. Are you updating over there regularly, or are you going to get back into that as the season progresses, Nino?
Yeah, most likely. Time permitting.
So, you know, it's like everything else. And that's what's great about our site is that, you know, Danny himself publishes more than people at our site. And we're talking about all the people at our site combined. So if you want to check out regular content, check out Did the Tribe Win Last Night for Danny's stuff. If you want to check out random, this is why we're pissed off stuff, come to EHC. That's just what we're... On a side note, those of you that are listening, check us out on iTunes. Give us a ranking. That'll help us out a lot. The higher we get up in the podcast, the more I'm able to do as far as improvements to the site and stuff like that. So check out the site, everybodyhatescleveland.com, didthetribewinlastnight.com, and check out the podcast. Have a good one. Go Tribe.